Hi, guys, and thank you for listening. This is our first conversation together, and I hope it helps you as you are on your journey in learning English, in speaking in English, and specifically in listening and hearing English and understanding it. My brother David and I are happy to be part of this journey with you. So, this is what we're going to do today. We're going to have our first class, and it's going to be about storytelling. Why storytelling? I'll answer that question here soon. All right? But first, what you want to know is, after watching this video, here in the classroom online platform, there's a space, an area where you can review the entire transcription of this video. So even though this video doesn't have subtitles, you can click on the transcription, the review, and the pronunciation section, and you can listen word by word how each word is pronounced. You'll notice that I'm not speaking very slowly, and I'm also not trying to speak very quickly, even though when we're very comfortable with our language, with how we communicate, our tendency is to speak faster and faster. But I'm going to use my regular speed, my regular tone, and you just work on listening to this conversation as many times as you need to, all right? So this class is going to be about storytelling, and the next two classes are also going to be about different aspects of storytelling. So these conversations, they won't just be about any weird thing I'm thinking at the moment. Even though, yes, I am thinking of lots of weird stuff right now. What these conversations are about are specific topics that I'm really interested in, and I hope they're helpful to you, not only in your English speaking, but in your communication in general. All right? So let's get this started. But here in our first class, I want to answer the number one question, which is, well, why storytelling? Daniel, what is so interesting about storytelling? And I would offer 3 points at least to answer that question. First, storytelling conveys emotion. And this is true not only of English, but in any language. So when you learn English, it's common for you to, at first, learn those very important, very useful phrases, such as, how much is this sandwich? Where are the bathrooms? Oh no, I lost my flight. Can you help me? And these are very good phrases to repeat, to have written down in your notebook. I know that there are books with the 1,000 most useful phrases in English, and these are all very important things. But stories are a step further. Because, for example, asking someone, how much does this hamburger cost? That doesn't really convey emotion. That's just a question that I need an answer from. And a lot of the conversations that we have in the business world, that we have in an office, that take place in an airport, for example, will be these factual, I need data kind of conversations. Can you send me the spreadsheet? Can you send me the Excel file? Can you send me the project by close of business, by 6 p.m.? Can you come to our meeting with the board members tomorrow? These are all scenarios or conversations that don't really convey emotion. They just need data. And so you're an employee or you're at an airport and you need to offer your passport, show your passport. These are scenarios where it's just, there's not a lot of emotion going on, because not all conversations require emotions. But stories, on the other hand, are very, very different. And thankfully so. Whereas asking, how much is this sandwich, doesn't convey emotion. Listen to this phrase. I remember the kind of sandwich my grandmother used to make me. That's a simple phrase. It has to do with food. But one phrase is cold. It conveys no emotion. And the other phrase, the one about my grandma, it conveys curiosity. What's it about the sandwich his grandma made, which was so exceptional? He never told me about his grandma. Who is his grandma? Did his grandma raise him for a time? What happened to his parents? How often did he see his grandma? Did the sandwich stick out because it really tasted good? Or does he remember it to this day because it was the worst sandwich he ever had? Stories convey a whole bunch of emotion, and that's one of the reasons I love storytelling. It takes us from just a relationship that you have numbers and data and something that's commercially speaking very interesting, and I need it. So let's have a transaction. Here's my money, you give me my hamburger. That's fine. But storytelling is the next step up. It's another kind of conversation. It conveys memories, it conveys emotions. Not only that, but storytelling is awesome because it's time travel. I think Stephen King, the great author who writes horror stories, he makes this point in one of his books. He says that stories, or writing stories, is like time travel. You can take the reader to a different time and a different planet and a different space and a different moment, and the reader is transported via time travel, via the story, to this other place. And what he means is, when you dive into a story, you're diving into a whole nother world. And stories are like that. For example, you don't know my grandma, but I can tell you about my grandma. You can get to know my grandma through the stories I tell. You can cherish and enjoy the things I enjoy about my grandma if I tell you the stories about my grandma. Not only that, but storytelling builds bridges. Storytelling builds bridges. It connects the dots. And what I mean by that is, you're a human being and I'm a human being. How do I let you know that I have many of the same experiences, I have many of the same questions, many of the same hobbies, many of the same awkward moments that you have? How do I let you know that? One of the ways is through storytelling. When I share a story about my family or about an awkward moment I had on a roller coaster, that tells you I'm just as human as you are. I make mistakes like you do. There are questions I can't answer, just like you have questions you don't answer. You don't have the answers to. There are people like my grandparents, my parents, my children that I cherish and I love. And through my stories, I let you know that we have something in common. We both cherish our families. We both cherish the friends that are around us. This is 3 really quick ways to explain why storytelling is so impactful. But first, a story. So I was in Portugal about 10 years ago, and I was taking a tour of Lisbon, or Lisboa, and I was with 2 other guys, and I got a little bit lost, right? They were walking up ahead, talking, and I got distracted by studying the architecture of this old neighborhood we were in. And I ended up finding myself all alone. And that wasn't a problem because I knew which general direction they went, so I could catch up. But as I was walking, I was just trying to soak up what it was like to be in another country. I hadn't traveled much at that point, at that time in my life. And so it was a really cool experience for me to be in a situation in a country I'd never, ever stepped in before. And while I'm walking down this winding road that had stones in the street, I realized that we were sort of on a hill where you could see the rest of the city below. And so as I turned a corner and came out of this alleyway, all of a sudden, in front of me was the rest of the city. And I was like looking down on it. And here in the corner was this restaurant that hadn't opened yet. I think the waiters were cleaning the tables so that it could open soon. The sun was starting to set. There were some trees with birds starting to fly off and sing and chirp. And over here, the city. At the restaurant, they had the radio turned on, and there was this old Portuguese instrumental music playing. And at that moment that I turned the alleyway and looked at the scenario, I felt like I had stepped on or into a movie. It was beautiful. It was just absolutely beautiful. And I remember thinking, I need to take a picture of this. But I kept walking while I was getting my camera out of my pocket. And I took a couple more steps downwards, pulled out my camera, and as I went to take a picture, I realized the scenario had already changed. The birds had flown off. The sunset was quite a bit lower. My angle wasn't so high on the hill. I had taken a couple steps down. And so I couldn't take in what I had taken in the very first time I saw that beautiful scenario. If I could go back in my life and pause a moment and just live in that moment, if I could take my 3 boys, my 3 sons, the youngest of which is only 8 months old, if I could take them to a moment with me, I wish I could go to that day in Portugal when I was exploring all by myself and saw a very peaceful, very relaxing, very beautiful scene. I wish I could hit pause and just sit there with my sons and soak up that moment. The closest I get to actually doing that is telling stories or listening to stories. Stories, they pause the moment and they transport you and I back to that moment and give us a taste of what it was like. Even though you can't paint the entire painting, you can't relive the moment, but you can retell what the moment made you feel and what it looked like. And that's why I'm such a fan of storytelling. One tip for telling good stories, and then we'll end this class. And that is aim for small. Aim for small. Especially when you're starting out in your English, aim for small. You know, I just started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes, and I'm loving it. I am a white belt, and as you know, a white belt means you are an absolute noob. You know nothing. You lose to absolutely everybody. So I'm going through my losing phase, right? Every class, I end up beaten. And that's part of the fun of it. But notice, my teacher, when he teaches me jiu-jitsu, He teaches me about like one defense or one attack, one movement per class. And when he does the movement to show me how to do it, put your leg over here and then wrap your arm around here and then pull the person towards you, do a chokehold. When he does it, it seems so smooth, so fast, so almost graceful. And then when I do it, it's clunky, it's heavy, and it's very, very slow. Plus, my teacher has to correct me along the way, even though he has a great attitude and he's always saying, Daniel, you're doing such a great job, which is very encouraging because I always come away feeling I'm not doing such a great job. Anyway, here's the deal. I know that here in a year or here in 2 years, the small movements I've been training, they will become more and more graceful. I will become more confident with them. I will be able to do them in a smoother fashion with much more grace. However, I will only improve if I use the movement, if I train the movement. What would happen if I would be afraid of actually putting this technique into practice? What would happen? What if I just said, you know what, when it comes time to like actually do a fight or a roll there on the mat, when it comes time, I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want people to see how much of a white belt I am, and so I'm just not going to train. I'm not going to execute that which I've learned. What's going to happen? Well, I'll never get better. That's the whole point. And that's pretty much true in life, right? That's also true when it comes to using your English in storytelling. The very first stories that you're going to tell about where you're from, where you're going, how you plan on getting there, the kind of people who have had an influence in your life, the first stories you're going to tell, they're going to be like my jiu-jitsu. Clunky, slow, not that exciting. You're a white belt in storytelling in English. But you're going to get better because you're going to make small progress forward. You're going to share small stories about where you came from, about the things you value, or about trips you had, or about awkward moments you suffered through. You're going to share small stories, and those small steps are going to propel you forward. All right? Well, we'll get back to this in our second class because I want to help you in our second class think about sharing personal stories. And why personal? What's too personal? We're going to talk about that in our next class. But I wanted you to realize right now, you know a lot about me. You know I've traveled to other countries. You know I like sports, specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, even though I'm not very good at it. And you also know I have 3 children, the youngest of which is still a baby. You know that I know what it's like to be a beginner, to be a white belt in something, and to be insecure. How do you know these things? I didn't just tell you that. I told stories, and those stories communicated those things. You learned about me through the stories I told. That's one of the fascinating things I love about storytelling. Thank you for listening.